Hi everybody, my name is Melissa Speeg. I work for Kittitas Conservation Trust. If you don't know us, then we are a small land trust that's based up in the Upper Yakima Basin. And we specialize in doing not only land conservation, but stream restoration as well. And today I'm here to talk to you about the Hanson Ponds preliminary design project. So we're seeking design and permitting funding to continue to support a multifaceted project, and this project seeks to protect critical infrastructure, reduce local flood hazards, restore floodplain function, improve salmon habitat, and increase recreational opportunities for our community. So it's a pretty cool project because it really is bringing together all these aspects to do a lot of meaningful work, and we believe it'll provide a really big uplift for salmon in our area as well. I just want to point out in this picture, you are looking at an eroding bank that's starting to go this way, and a barb has been built to try to protect this bank from eroding. And this is the inlet that goes into Hanson Ponds. And the problem that's happening is the river is laterally migrating here, and it wants to move into the ponds. Like, it's just a natural process that's happening there. This is a region-specific project. It's located to the south of Cle Elum, and you can kind of see the ponds here. It's an overly large rectangle. That's fine. Okay, so this is kind of a close-up of our site. So way back when, and maybe not that long ago in terms of things, they excavated these ponds in order to get fill for the I-90 expansion project. And when they did that, they created a levee that extends down quite a ways, and particularly up in here constricts the river a lot. They also, I think, must have, to a lesser extent, kind of excavated out down here, and then they excavated Kiwanis Pond, which is now a popular fishing pond for the disabled and youth. This is where the sewer outfall comes out right here that the city of Cle Elum manages. And it's kind of protected by this like this levee that they built here. And you can kind of see this is the bend in the river, and the inlet channel and outlet channel is down here. And then this is kind of just a bird's eye view of it from space. You can kind of see that levee there, the upper pond, the middle pond. It goes through some pretty cool wetland complex right there, and then comes out to these two lower ponds right here. I also just want to point out that I-90 is right next to the spot right here, and that we also have the I-90 on-off ramp as well. Okay, so this project is found in the Steelhead Recovery Plan under actions 12 and 13. So we want to reduce confinement of the Upper Yakima River, as well as protect and restore floodplain. In addition, it can be found under the Technical Advisory Focus Project List, number 21, which is to improve Upper Yakima floodplain and do side channel restoration. This project was originally funded through Surfboard with matching money from the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program in 2019. And so it funded work to complete an assessment, which we did, and then also help inform the development of some restoration alternatives for the site and a feasibility study. Okay, and through that assessment, we, I don't know, want to say learned, because we kind of knew that these things existed, right? But it reinforced our knowledge. The limiting factors here are a loss of side channel and floodplain habitat, degraded riparian corridors. There's also increased stream temperatures from where the water comes into the pond. About 10% of the Yakima flow goes into the ponds, and then that's kind of heated up over time because they're, just a big, large exposed area. That there's, non-point pollution coming in from I-90 that there's a loss of ocean-derived nutrients, and the regulated flows have a big impact as well. And what's really cool, I think, about this project is that we're going to be able to touch on quite a few of these limiting factors. So one of the limiting factors is that it's constricted, and we'll get down to it in a minute, but basically where we've landed so far in the design process, the conceptual alternatives process, is that we want to do a full levee setback. So we're going to be able to address the constriction that's going on here, right, and really open up our floodplain. I also want to point out we have these really cool, it is a little less constricted down here, and so we have these really cool side channels, but these side channels really lack large wood. There is some like riparian vegetation cover, but it's pretty much just like a straightaway through these side channels. And then I also just want to point out that this work complements some of like the conservation efforts that have gone along and through this reach, right? So the city of Cle Elum, and it's all of this property and this one here, we recently acquired using surfboard funding. Very exciting. These 15 acres in Cottonwood Cove, which is like a very pristine floodplain area. We also worked in partnership with the Bonneville Power Administration and the Yakima Nation to acquire the Boone property down here. Yakima Nation owns this property. And then the Bonneville Power Association owns quite a bit of property up and down the river, right? So it's just kind of complementing that work that's already going on here. Okay, at the site, we have a lot of fish resources. We have steelhead in the juvenile and adult stage, spring chinook in the egg, juvenile, and adult stage. We have coho salmon, maybe bull trout, definitely used to be bull trout here, rainbow trout, and cutthroat trout. And this map shows the work of Andy Dittman's 10-year study of the reach that documented spring chinook red. So we see that it is a really important reach, right, for spring chinook. And what's really interesting and not surprising is that in our straightaway here, we have less reds, but in our more complex habitat, a little bit down lower, we have a lot more reds present. And what we're going to try to propose through this project is to really open up all of this, right, and really create that floodplain habitat and off-channel habitat. Okay, so the project goals. Number one goal is to increase the quantity and quality of accessible off-channel ring habitat for juvenile spring chinook and all of the other important fish that I just listed. Goal 2 is to improve riverine and floodplain function and the quantity and quality of habitats. Goal 3 is to enhance the recreational opportunities because they are limited at the site currently. And goal number 4 is to reduce flood risk for that regional sewer outfall I mentioned at the beginning and I-90 infrastructure. So kind of diving into that a little bit. This project, as with the conceptual alternative that we're currently looking at, proposes to create approximately 6,600 feet of new side channels and off-channel habitat, which is really cool. In those newly formed side channels, we're proposing to build 25 to 30 large wood structures. That may fluctuate as we move further into the design process, but you know that's what we're looking at right now. Work will also improve existing off-channel habitat. So I pointed out that we're really lacking wood and what's already there, and so we're looking at adding maybe 15 to 20 large wood structures there as well. And then we also want to improve fish passage if possible, and I can go back later and show this at 5 existing rock weirs. So if we're going to make the habitat good, then we need to go back and probably address the rock weirs, which would be really challenging for smaller salmon or rearing salmon to make it up at certain flows, especially winter flows when it drops. Okay, so we also want to improve floodplain function. As proposed right now, we're looking at creating approximately 22 acres of new floodplain habitat. I had the privilege of sitting in and listening to the assessment that Mid-Columbia Fisheries with Kat Strathman did on cottonwood stands. And that makes me really excited. I know that that work was done, or the assessment was done below our reach here, but I think that we could use that information that Mid-Columbia and NSD put together and kind of like help also create some really favorable conditions for cottonwood reproduction at this site as well. Other really cool things that we can do at this site is that right now like cars are driving by on I-90 on the highway there, and really the only like barrier in between the two or in between the highway and the ponds or water supply is a very porous boulder bank, right? And it doesn't have that much vegetation relative. And so, we imagine that non-point pollutants are coming off the highway and down into our water. So we might be able to create some like wetlands kind of as a buffer for that to help filter some of that out. We also just have a lot more vegetation than that's there currently. The spoils that were left as the levees and like the rock bank that runs along I-90 are just not ideal for supporting like a really healthy, thriving riparian forest. And this project presents an opportunity to change that. We also kind of want to enhance the recreational opportunities. So currently there used to be a bridge that crossed that inlet channel. And then I believe in 2009 with the floods that got wiped out, and the city of Clayum hasn't really been able to get that put back in place yet. So if you're an able-bodied person, then you can cross the river during low flows. But once the irrigation flows happen, it is extremely challenging. I don't feel comfortable doing it. I go across in a little inflatable kayak if I need to make it over there. And then there's only about like a mile of trail that's down like a really hot hot gravel levee. And what we're proposing as of right now is to create about 2.8 miles of trail, right? And that will be thoughtfully placed so that we're not impacting like our wetlands and sensitive areas, but that we're able to give people an experience, kind of with using like the Yakima Greenway as like a model. So people can go hiking, they can view wildlife, and other, and just enjoy the outdoors right there. Even though there's the roar of I-90, it is a really cool spot and it does have a lot of wildlife. Okay, we also want to reduce the flood risk to critical infrastructure. So as I was pointing out earlier, this is the eroding bank here. This is the rock spur during higher flows. Like the bank, it creates a back eddy, it's eroding it. The sewer outfall comes down through here and comes out here. If the river were to avulse, then we're losing water for mixing rate, and that's going to cause our sewer outfall to be high and dry, and that is not good because it services the cities of Cle Elum, Roslyn, Ronald, the Suncadia community, and the city of South Cle Elum. And we did the math yesterday, and now I'm not remembering the number that we came up with. But that's quite a bit of people that wouldn't be able to flush their toilets, and we don't want that. Okay, so just a close-up of that lateral migration I was talking about. Here's the inlet channel to Hanson Ponds, and then this is once again like where the sewer outfall is located. Little picture. Okay, and we also want to protect I-90. So when let's go back up 1 second. We're looking at this. I-90 is not armored in this section to withstand flood flow. So if the river avulses into there, it's not protected to handle that. And in, I can never pronounce his name, but in a study that they did on the Yakima River and Cle Elum River, that was, financed by the city of Cle Elum, they identified that there is a risk to the highway as well as this structure, this on-off ramp right here. Okay, and then I just kind of want to show you some of the hydraulics. So this is a 2-year event. That's about 5,900, and you can see things kind of moving along in there. This is a 25-year event. And what I want to point out too, so you can see that we're having a lot of connection right here. But there's also a hot spot that starts developing right here as well, which also is a threat to the sewer outfall. Water starts moving across here. And it is interesting, I have seen it connected, and it's been a problem that the city of Cle Elum has had to address in the past as well. All right, actually, let me go back really quick. So I also just want to note that the 2009 floods peak flows was recorded at 8,800 CFS. That's lower than this. And it significantly eroded the bank adjacent to the parking lot. So we were thinking about that, right? Like that might have been what, a 10-year flow? A 25-year flow could have a substantial, you know, starts posing like a real risk that the river could avulse over into there. And then a 100-year flow, everything just gets wet. It gets real crazy. We got a lot of hot spots in this area. All right. Okay, so these are the two alternatives that we're moving forward. And by two, I mean we kind of have an alternative one and alternative two. And the real difference is that we have, in alternative one, we looked at just fortifying the bank here, you know, to kind of try to buff up against that lateral migration. And the second one was pretty cool, is that we bring it back. Instead, we fortify Kiwanis Pond, which is really, once again, important to the community of Cle Elum. The city of Cle Elum is open to removing it if needed, but it is I want to say prized possession of the city or of the citizens of the community, as well as we've heard that it's really important to WDFW as well. But we could try to armor this instead, and that would allow the river some more freedom to do what it wants here. One of the other things I want to talk about right quick is that through our assessment process, or through the assessment and design process so far in developing these alternatives, we've had really great conversations. And so now we're working on getting an amendment through FEMA. Oh, sorry, Michael. I don't know how many minutes ago that was. Okay, I'll wrap this up. That we are also looking at the moving, if we can relocate where the outfall is located, because it's not a great location. So we're going to kind of look at some different alternatives for that and do an analysis on the feasibility of doing that. These are the two other alternatives. Like I said, we're trying to get preliminary designs done and a cultural survey. I just want to say right quick that this is a very timely project. Cle Elum will have to renegotiate their wastewater project or permit in 2 years. And Kittitas County is also pursuing funding for expanding I-90. So this is really just tying everything together in a really cool way. And we have these stakeholders at the table currently. We're looking at $171,000, give or take, maybe 172 to do the preliminary designs and the cultural survey. And we've had some matching funding, and we're also applying for floodplains by design to kind of round out this work. Questions?
Thank you.
Melissa, I just want to tell everybody that I think that was the prettiest presentation I've seen. So thank you.
Thank you.
For the visual too. Yeah. And it was really clear and easy to understand. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Becca.
So Melissa, this is Kirk. Can you go back real quick? I know you need to wrap up, but who are your partners on this project? You kind of breezed by that.
Oh, yeah, Kirk. I'm really excited about this. Okay, so we have Department of Natural Resources, the Kittitas County Conservation District, Flood Control District, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Yakima Nation. We brought some of our regulators, so we already have Department of Ecology at the table. We have the Washington Department of Transportation. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, Kirk, were you going to say?
Well, the reason I'm asking is, from a funding perspective, FEMA money is kind of a pain in the neck. And
I know. It's a real pain, Kirk.
Yeah, and I was just kind of wondering, these stakeholders, there's resources available, through a couple of these avenues. The Flood Control Zone District, for example, is really primarily, a taxing district to provide funding for partnering on this sort of thing. And I was just kind of wondering, it might help if there was some sort of commitment from some of these partners to throw a little bit of money at you to kind of complete this work and maybe soften the blow to the surfboard a little bit, and I don't know if that conversation's been going on or what, but just some food for thought.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Kirk. We haven't had that conversation. We certainly could have that conversation. I'll tell you one other thing I wanted to mention. So I mentioned that we're applying for floodplains by design funding, right? Because it matches up real well with that too. The only drawback to that is by the end, I think, of June or beginning of July, we should be done with like this phase of the project. And if we get funded by floodplains by design, which would be awesome, we still have to wait a whole nother year because it doesn't begin until like the summer, like June of 2023. And that's a real bummer, right? Like that is a long time to go without moving anything on this project forward. And, I just want to say that's one of the reasons why we came to Surfboard, right? Just to kind of carry it further. We're not trying to get Surfboard to pay for all of it. Like we are looking at different sources, but it seemed like a good little like bump in the middle to make sure that this work continues forward with the momentum that we have.
Elizabeth says, well done, Melissa. Preliminary designs as defined by Surfboard is construction permit application ready design. Are you planning to go for conceptual?
Yes, conceptual is what we were trying to do here. The permit ready designs we would try, in final, we would do through floodplains by design. It's kind of the goal.
Thanks. Sean says in the chat, it would be helpful to describe how you intend to address some of the goals that have a lot of potential to be in conflict. You are seeming to propose to improve everything, and it's unclear if that's feasible.
Okay, Sean, help me out here. What do you feel is a conflict? And you've been a part of this, so but what are some of the conflicts that you're seeing?
Well, it just seems like, you're proposing a better outcome for sewer risk, a better outcome for the road risk, creating all these channels. The main outcome of that Cottonwood study, I would say, is that channel migration and process is a key missing ingredient, but you're describing avulsion as a threat and a problem. So there's a lot of potential for these different goals to be in conflict. I mean, and at the same time having lots and lots of trail. So, not addressing those conflicts sometimes gets you to an infeasible project, or sometimes gets you to a project that costs 5 times as much as maybe a reasonable project. So that's what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I will say that the reason why I'm saying that avulsion is not ideal here is, one, because of the sewer outfall, but two, like if our river moves into the pond here, that is not great habitat for fish, right? Like that is really less than ideal that we're in a big soup pond, right? Where we know that supports warm water predators, both native and non-native, much better so than it supports like our native salmon. So that, from a fisheries perspective, I would say that is a real threat in this stretch, especially since this provides such good like spring Chinook spawning habitat.
I would totally disagree with that, though. I would totally disagree with that. That is how a system like this heals itself. That's what we've seen at Gladmar. It will not stay a pond if the river is in there. So there's some process, some channel evolution stuff that should be considered. And that Cottonwood study is a great example of where we've lost the productivity of the cottonwood, is from sort of locking the channel in and not allowing, erosion and deposition processes to occur. If the river went in there, you would see a bunch of deposition. Down at Thorpe, you have a pretty good example.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, we still have our infrastructure here, which I get is in Surfboard funded. If we're pulling back the levee here, for the most part, then we're achieving the same thing without leaving like this infrastructure in the middle of the river, right? We're like reducing this threat. I mean, I hear what you're saying about cost at the end of the day, and we'll work to try to address that. I mean, I've gotten lucky in a lot of our other projects so far, and things really lining up and being able to do it. But I mean, I think pulling back the levy and protecting, I mean, definitely protecting I-90, right, and then trying to address the issue that's here, while all the benefits it could provide is like a realistic thing that we can do at this site.
We'll have to take one last question offline and move on to Mitch's presentation at this point. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Yeah.
All right, Mitch, thanks for joining us as well.
Hey, great. Am I able to share